evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the virtual Japanese-German Center Berlin and the fourth lecture and dialogue event in the series Radikal Modern on the topic of co-ownership of action, the Japanese pavilion at the 17th International Architecture Exhibition La Biennale di Venezia, which is organized and hosted by the Japanese-German Center Berlin in cooperation with the TU Dortmund, TU Berlin, and the Bund Deutscher Architekten. Thank you all very much for joining us. My name is Phoebe Stiller-Holtgrün. I'm head of project management at the Japanese-German Center Berlin. Please let me make just one or two organizational remarks for our audience participating via Zoom. Please keep your microphone turned off during all times, except when asking a question or making a comment during Q&A. If you would like to ask questions or make a comment during the Q&A session, please raise your virtual Zoom hand and wait until the chair addresses you. Thank you. And now, I would like to hand over to Ms. Tōkyō Kiyota, Deputy Secretary General at the Japanese-German Center Berlin, for her words of welcome and the official opening of our event. Kiyota-san.
Hi, thank you, Mrs. Holtgrün. Dear Professor Hanada, dear Professor Gleiter, dear Professor Kadowaki, dear Mr. Nagasaka, and dear Mrs. Iwase, distinguished guests and friends. It is my great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Japanese-German Center Berlin to our virtual lecture and dialogue event titled Co-Ownership of Action, the Japan Pavilion of the 17th International Architecture Exhibition, La Biennale di Venezia. Today's lecture and German-Japanese dialogue on architecture is the fourth edition of the lecture series Radikal Modern with Professor Heike Hanada, Technical University Dortmund, and Professor Jörg Gleiter of Technical University Berlin, and the Berlin section of Bund Deutscher Architekten, the Association of German Architects. Like so many other important events, the 17th Venice Architecture Biennale had to be postponed to 2021 due to the current coronavirus crisis. Professor Kozo Kadowaki had been selected curator by the commissioner and the organizer of the German Pavilion, the Japan Foundation, already last year. So we are very delighted that Professor Kadowaki and the architects Mr. Joe Nagasaka and Ms. Ryoko Iwase agreed to speak today and will give us insight into how they conceptualized and designed the Japan Pavilion project. When reading about their concept, co-ownership of action, trajectories of elements on website, and about their idea to relocate an ordinary Japanese wooden private house to Venice, I wondered, really, can this be possible? Is it interesting enough to show an ordinary house? But then I understood the meaning of the co-ownership and trajectories of elements. It is profound. I am sure that many of us will be inspired by the event tonight and visit the Venice Architecture Biennale, especially the Japan Pavilion, please. I sincerely hope that we will be able to travel to Italy next year. I am looking forward very much to the lecture by Professor Kadowaki and the following dialogue between the Japanese and the German architects. Professor Kadowaki, Ms. Iwase, Mr. Nagasaka, I am very sorry, but also very grateful that you stay up so late in the night with us. Thank you very much. ありがとうございます。Professor Heike Hanada of Technical University Dortmund and architect of the Bauhaus Museum in Weimar initiated and conceptualized the dialogue series Radikal Modern with Professor Jörg Gleiter of Technical University Berlin. At previous radical modern events, we welcomed, for example, the Japanese architects Junya Ishigami in 2018 and Momoyo Kaishima in 2019. I would like to take the opportunity and thank Professor Hanada and Professor Gleiter for the fruitful cooperation in the last years. Dear all, we are excited that so many people are zooming in today or follow the live stream. Although most of us certainly miss personal contacts and networking in the real life, digital events enable us easily to bring together experts and participants from all over the world, and thus we are happy that we are able to carry the Radical Modern series forward. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and we look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kiyota. It is now my great pleasure to give the word to our cooperation partner and initiator of the Radikal Modern series, Professor Heike Hanada from Technical University Dortmund, for her introduction and for moderating the lecture and dialogue together with Professor Jörg Gleiter from Technical University Berlin. Professor Hanada, the floor is yours, please.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased, and especially I would like to thank Mrs. Kiyota and of course also you, Mrs. Holtgrün, and before it was Mr. Brenn, that we are allowed for the fourth time to initiate this kind of program. And I'm very happy that we could this year arrange a dialogue with the architects for the Japanese pavilion, which we haven't seen yet. I think this is a very specific and a very generous support from you as a Japanese-German center in Berlin, that you are willing and that you agreed to do this project together. And I'm also very happy that Jörg Gleiter is again willing to support me and will be side and will be very helpful to create the dialogue after the lectures we will hear. Maybe just a little bit before we start, I would like to mention the idea of this dialogue. It started to, it arose in a way together with the anniversary of the Bauhaus 2019, and already 2018 I had the wish or the idea to install a dialogue series with countries where the Bauhaus had a stronger influence. And one of these countries is of course Japan, and because I was in the 90s, I was living in Tōkyō for about 6 years. This is a kind of occupying my thoughts. And I believe that the modernism had a stronger input even than after World War II. And I was wondering how strong this influence is still today, or let's say what kind of conflicts raised together with this modern movement. And therefore, we asked before other Japanese architects to comment this, maybe also in relationship to their own work. And I think today we will hear actually a quite new statement or new thinking of this development of modern cities. And I think Japan had always a very individual approach to architecture, and it still has. So I would not like to talk too much. I think it will be much more interesting after the lecture to come to this point again. And therefore I would now like to hand over to Kuzo Kadowaki. He will start to explain his idea for the Japanese pavilion next year for the Biennale. And then it will be followed by Yu Nagasaki and Ryoko Iwase. And yeah, so please, I would like to offer you now to start with your lecture. Kuzuka.
Thank you for introducing me. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kozo Kadowaki, an architect and an associate professor of building construction at Meiji University. Today, I'd like to talk about the Japan Pavilion exhibition at the coming Venice Biennale of Architecture. So from now, I would like to share my screen. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. Our exhibition is titled Co-Ownership of Action, Trajectory of Elements, in collaboration with Joe Nagasaka, Ryoko Iwase, Taichi Tsunayama, Toshikatsu Kiuchi, Daisuke Motogi, Rikako Nagashima, Tang, and etc. etc. Today, Joe and Ryoko and Toshikatsu join us. So we can discuss with them after my lecture. In very, very short, what we are trying is to move or transport an anonymous house from Tokyo to Venice. This picture shows the house, which we call Takamizawa House, in honor of its owner. This is a row house with shops here, and looks very pretty. I love this house very much. And I'll tell you briefly why we decided to move this house. First, the architecture exhibition opened abroad spend money on the transportation of models and other exhibits. But the transport is not visible to the visitors, so we wanted to use the budget effectively. And nowadays, everything is available on the internet, so we couldn't see much point in an exhibition showing models and panels. Then we thought we would take something that is meaningful in its transportation from Japan to Venice and exhibit the process of transportation itself. But we were quite worried about what to transport to Venice. Then when looking around, we realized that Japan is filled with houses, as you know. And moreover, because Japan's population is now shrinking, so old houses are being demolished one by one. Then it would be good to move such a house. Hopefully, we can get it for free. That was Joe's great idea. In this way, the concept of the exhibition was decided. We exhibited the process by which a commonplace house is demolished and transported and reassembled in Venice. However, it was very difficult. It was not easy to find the kind of house we expect. And to tell you how Takamizawa House was found, it is necessary to explain the location. This is our location. Takamizawa House was across the street from my house. My house is architectural work designed by myself, but unfortunately, I can't talk about my house today. I talk about this house. Anyway, it was dark under the lighthouse. As a result of efforts in all directions, I found this house in near of myself. This is the facade. It is a double row house. This one is the one unit, and this is also one unit. And there are other shops, and there are other residential units. Another angle. This part is also the Takamizawa house, a separate building built by the current owner who grew up here when he became independent. And this is the original building. This is the picture inside. And this is a very Japanese traditional way, a record of the children's growth. They are the name and date and how old are children. Very typical common people's house of the Showa era. The original building had not been lived in for a while at the end, so it has deteriorated. But there are many posters on the wall you can find that give a good sense of the era. This is the Disney posters, and this is horse and anything. And like that, this house swallows a lot of era-specific ordinary things, very ordinary things. There are many ordinary things, and we find here very ordinary people in Tokyo. This is the picture inside of the shop. We found a layer of wallpapers. This is maybe old wallpaper, and the next wallpaper, and this is the next. And please take a look of this star. These stars are made by the child of this house. So maybe the residents love this house very much. And this is the interior of the additional building that had been lived in until just before the demolition. It was very like a house in Tokyo, full of many things. And you can find the exterior wall of the next house, very close to the next house. And the demolition began in last September because the owner rebuilt the house into a new house to live together with his children. These are cut out samples here and there for architects to use in their studies. So this is a cut ceiling, and the architects studied to using such samples to make good exhibitions. And after a while, the wooden frameworks appears here. This is a very old pillars like that. But if we lost the positions of the components after demolition, we would not be able to assemble them in Venice. So we put stickers like that with printed IDs on every components. This is a sticker affixed to a pillar. And we put stickers on every members like that. But however, the stickers did not stay together well. So, and the removed stickers sometimes stuck on unexpected places like this. He is the owner of this house, and one sticker affixed to his t-shirt. In such case, we have lost information about the components. And the components themselves are sometimes lost, of course. And some things like mud wall, Japanese traditional wall, cannot be exported for quarantine reasons. And of course, there are also elements that have broken down, like the cement wall. The house could not be demolished all at once with heavy masonry, so it had to be carefully demolished one by one using the hand. He's our collaborator, Narutake Fukumoto from Tank. In parallel, the surveys by historians were also conducted. They are the historians of the Japanese old shrines, and they can do the surveys of the old shrines, which is renovated in many times. So that their techniques was adapted to this house. As a result of the survey, we found that Takamizawa House has changed drastically since it was newly built. The left picture is the picture in the newly built in 1955, so 1954. And Takamizawa House was originally a single-story house, but the last one is the two-story. And this figure shows the changes in appearances and plans estimated from the survey. And this is the original building, single-storied. And next, in 1957, the half part was added into two-storied. And 1961, this part was added. And in 1978, the water section was improved. And after that, in 1982, the new house, this one, was built to accommodate the current owner's family. And also the area around Takamizawa House has also changed drastically. This black dot represents the location of the Takamizawa House. This is before constructed the Takamizawa House. And the gray area represents the populated areas in Tokyo. Initially, the Takamizawa House located on the edge of the urban areas, but Takamizawa House was soon taken up by the city. This is the result of the sprawl. And during the demolition process, a lot of things were also found in the house. These are the very, very old scissors that were used in a barber shop that opened in 1954 and soon closed down. And you can find a window here. And this is a window that was being covered by the extension. So this was a closed window during a long time. This was found old signage, Yamashita Kasten, cake shop. Once a jigsaw puzzle was found when breaking a wall from the inside of the wall. The owner said that the puzzle was his hobby, and he showed the puzzle on the wall. And after renovation, the puzzle was covered by the new wall. I was very surprised. It's an old puzzle. Maybe he completed it in 1980s. And the dismantled components were taken to a rented warehouse for closer inspections. The warehouse filled up quickly, and we had a hard time here. And the main components are scanned here in 3D. So this is the picture, the components being scanned using the laser scanners. And now we are currently building a database of 3D models of the components or elements. The next step is finally the customs formalities. So carrying out the warehouse and organizing the components in a warehouse, new warehouse by the port, Tōkyō port. And pack them into crates like that. This is the beam with Japanese joint, wood joint. And loading into a container. And then they left to Tōkyō Bay. And it was in the last February. But after that, the pandemic happened. So Takamizawa House had been stuck in the port of Venice for a long time. It was the end of May when Takamizawa House in Venice started to move again. This is the canal in Venice and the boat in Venice. And this is a photo in Giardini. Giardini is the park which the Japan Pavilion is located. And carrying into the Japan Pavilion. And now, Takamizawa House is waiting for us in the Japan Pavilion. Here again, let's summarize the aims of the exhibition. First aim is to let Takamizawa House enjoy its second life in Venice. And second, we'd like to show the history of Takamizawa House because it records the transformation of Japan's house construction that changed from handicrafts to heavy industries. Takamizawa House was originally made of all handmade woods, but after that, the wood were repaired into aluminum sash, or the steel shutter was added, and so on and so on. So the Takamizawa House was added many industrialized components. And we thought that we should connect the history of Takamizawa House to the future. And we also want to show that transportation, which is conducive to mass consumption, can be an opportunity for a fresh, eye-opening rebirth of things. So we designed the structure of the exhibition like that. This is the Japan Pavilion. And the Japan Pavilion has the garden to show the sculpture in the garden. And this building was designed by architect Takamasa Yoshizato, who is who learned from Le Corbusier. So this building has the POP here. And in the garden of the Japan Pavilion, Takamizawa House will be reassembled and used in a different way than before. For example, by using the roof as a bench.
Setzt du eine Maske auf?
Inside the pavilion, we will exhibit the remains of components and the history of Takamizawa House. And this is the perspective of the POT. And this is the workshop for reassembly. During the exhibition, it will continue to be used as a workshop to make various crafts with unused components. And if we thought about the after exhibition, if Takamizawa House was destroyed and thrown away after the exhibition, it would mean that we took the garbage from Japan to Venice. So we did not want to do so. So the after exhibition is very important for us. And the postponement of Biennale was unfortunate for us, but it has given us more time to think about after the exhibition. After the exhibition, we will upcycle the rest components and make products like that. This is the lamp designed by Joe Nagasaka. This is the coasters designed by Ryoko, and send them to our supporters. And this postponed Biennale provides many opportunities for national curators to discuss. The Biennale was very competitive, but in this Biennale, I think it's very historical things. The national curators has the many opportunities to discuss to show the cooperation. And as a result, we became close to the Philippine pavilions. And now a project to move the components of Takamizawa House from Venice to Oslo in Norway has begun. We intend to build a communal facility here using the woods of Takamizawa house. And conclusions. Through this project, we realized the impossibility of owing our own actions, because our actions are always influenced by something in the past. And this project also raised doubts about the boundary between designing and fabricating, like architects and carpenters. And this realization also reminds us that the built environment itself is our collaborative product. However, these conclusions may sound like an abdication of free will and responsibility for especially European people. So I think it's important to be aware of the trajectory of things in order to see what our actions lead to. And this is the last of my presentation. But this project is also a collaborative production of the participants who work together. So I think you can feel the common feeling from the works of Jo and Ryoko, which will be introduced later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kadowaki-san. I think before we get into the discussion, it might be important to listen also to Ryoko-san and Jo-san. And I would ask to continue. Nagasaki-san, please.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joe Nagasaka.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I'd like to start my explanation from my work. This is my first work. After I graduated from college, I started my career with part-time job and making furniture. This is a flat table, which is one of the famous furniture work. I brought back antique table from the project site, but it was too uneven on surface. So to make it flat, I applied epoxy on tabletop. This table spread quickly, and the London-based furniture brand established Sons and began production and sales. This is the first Aesop shop in Japan in Aoyama, Tōkyō. In the beginning, I thought Aesop bottles would match with reclaimed wood, so I decided to make shelves with it. But I felt it was nonsense to choose them from catalog. So I received the woods through wrecking company when they demolished on an old house. For this case, I found the wood by chance. In there, I found the furniture and the flooring and the staircase material. I brought them back to my previous office and placed them on the floor to have a brainstorm. And I came to this idea to use reclaimed wood vertically because the durability of them are different for each pieces and use new plywood horizontally. Their thickness and colors are very unique in each pieces. This is how these shelves were born. Next. This building was used as company housing. The client wanted to renovate it to apartment. The location was 1 number from Shinjuku. Since it's a remote area, the rent cannot be high. But if there was no renovation, there was no one to live. So the request from the client was renovate every room, and the budget was 1 million yen per room. About the interior, it was typical Japanese complex housing, so-called NLDK type residence. N stands for number of the private room, L stands for living room, D stands for dining, K stands for kitchen. This is a notation to represent the residential floor plan. After World War II, Japan was facing the problem shortage of millions of residents. So we need to start to design to provide large number of residential house for short time to fill the needs. Also, you can see red and blue. It is divided two patterns, Western style and Japanese style. There are several types of rooms. There were more types. Thinking of the design within a budget, I couldn't come up with nice idea when I was sitting at my office. So I decided to design at the site and build by ourselves for first 5 rooms. So I actually did it. When I removed the green wall, it turns out like this. When I remove the green wall, suddenly Japanese and Western meets up. You see our outer surface of the unit bus, which is normally hidden. When I remove the green wall, you can see Japanese style and the Western style is connected. When I remove the green wall, you can see the Japanese style rooms floating on the space. When I remove the green wall, only shows left in the skeleton. At that time, I never thought shows and tatami were cool, but suddenly I started seeing them something very cool. Then I came up such an idea as this concept drawing. There could be the design to reconstruct by only subtract, not adding anything. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nagasaki-san. It was very impressive. And I'm looking forward to discuss it with you. So maybe, Ryoko-san, would you like to continue, please?
上官
はい、切ります。
ありがとうございます。 I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so I start my presentation. I'm Ryoko Iwase, architect located in Tokyo and Kyoto. And I think I'm youngest member of the team of Japan Pavilion. And I established my own office in 2012 after working for Ernst by N in Switzerland and Kengo Kuma in Tokyo. And future of my studio is covering multiple area from architecture space to public work infrastructure and public space design. I think I'm the I'm treating largest scale of the project among the team, I think. And in Japan, in general, these sections are strictly divided and hard to merge them. And however, my study is challenging and trying to seek for having new perspective through a spiral practice in a different field and getting feedback from each other. Using very, very universal method. For instance, this is my early work, glass pavilion using maximum size of 0.5 millimeter thickness glass sheets, which is usually used for mobile displays. And the glass is too thin to be seen, actually, but when the light comes in, the glass shows its existence. This table, which is made of strand rope, which is usually used for bridge structure, showing the idea of applying civil engineering materials to furniture design. Maybe using this system might lead the design of 60 meter length, very huge table without any leg. Anyway, recently our studio started working on architecture projects and also larger scale, which is kind of park and public toilet, which needs a architecture and landscape field in one project. So today I introduced 3 projects of larger scale, introducing 2 points through the project, a bit related to Venice project. First one, how to keep making and how to experience its change. First one is, for example, when a project gets larger, like infrastructure, which stays over 100 years, it's difficult to recognize its movement or change of the environment, such as this at a small scale. It's really hard to be captured in a large scale. Like this, which is very attractive and showing somebody's atmosphere, very personal, and I really like it. So how can we keep making or changing after completion of project? The second one is beyond the boundaries and designing the connection of connecting interface. Like, for instance, our idea of expanding our exhibition to the garden of the Japan Pavilion have a potential to connect to neighbors nations. Okay, let's go to my project. First, I introduced 3 projects today. First project is Tōkyō Dandan, flood defense as waterfront public space to enrich people's daily life. It's located in Osaka City in Japan. Japan is, as you know, one of the countries most affected natural disaster for many years. The site used to be enclosed by typical flood defense, which is against natural disaster like this. It's really hard to see the water from the city side. But I got a chance to join a competition, which is a really radical one, held by local government in 2012, searching for idea focusing not only on functional side of flood defense, but also on attractive for local community. It's a really nice chance for me, and I won a competition. The project then is like this located, and canal were filled in a left forgotten as unused space for a while until the project started. The site was enclosed by wall like this. it has been changed like this. This is Tōkyō dandan. During the design period, I found a very interesting history of the section of flat defense. I thought it's just a wall, but the pink colored part is the part we designed, and the other part are built in the past. Each color showed the period in which flat walls were constructed. The wall section has been overwritten to be higher and stronger after each huge disaster over a half century. It was such a surprising. From this perspective, designing flat defense is equal to defining the way we communicate to the water in the coming future. We propose a flat defense as an intimate public space with some room for participation, enriching the lives with a communication to the environment, with keeping its function of disaster prevention, with adding terrace and sloping landscape to the existing walls, making smooth access to the water, and personalizing the scale of the walls. Now people can sit down on the flat defense directly, which it used to be untouchable. Many steps of various scales accept wide interpretation by users. Here also a system of planters which are designed to invite citizens to tend the greenery. It creates an atmosphere of the neighborhood and autonomy. We also design gardening equipment such as hose reel as a sign of the participation. The cleaning toolbox as well, we designed. The level of these steps down toward the water is specially permitted to the lower than the local standard. The high tide water comes into the site. Now water level becomes visible in the daily life as a changing. Now the walls are labeled with their construction year respectfully to show the history of the place. Okay, second project, street design expressing dynamism underground. The site is a city with a castle. You can have a nice view from the street, but you can also see the lot of parking lot along the street, which is covered by asphalt. Our proposal is to make more width for pedestrian sidewalk and making various widths for sidewalk to allow various behaviors. The design of the curvy road also helped to slow a motor vehicle. At the stage of the study of paving material, I found a large portion of private land along the street got paved with asphalt. It was many buildings along the street. There are a lot of parking lots. That's the reason. And I got the idea. I propose a flipped pavement, which means block pavement for roadway and asphalt for sideway to match the parking lots along the street. Usually, I think it's the other way around. So what happened? To have an unclear boundary between street and private land. This is our proposal of the landscape. And thinking of asphalt in deep way, you can not ignore the fact that most of the asphalt paved street is showed a chaotic patchwork like the photo in the middle, which is kind of old and new surface is mixed. Most streets have infrastructure trunk lines buried under them. Whenever the street side building is erected, the roadway gets dig up, and due to construction work required to connect to the trunk lines. Over time, the asphalt paved street comes to resemble a chaotic patchwork like before, like this. So for this project, I advised dividing up the asphalt surface from the outset so that with the passage of the time and the discoloration of the pavement, the history of the town's repairs create a collage-like pattern on the surface. Maybe after 30 years or something, maybe. And I also designed the block surfaces, and all board has a nut on the top so that people can use it, like maybe putting tables, small tables around the street. This is a scene of weekdays, street of holidays, and the last work to introduce. Okay, this is actually newest work, which has just started maybe 4 months ago or something. And this is a park design and public toilet project. And basic concept of the project is to make various places just by moving us from here to there. And this project actually started after Venice, so you can see the kind of influence for of the Venice project to this project. And flat site become place to cutting banking, place to cutting and banking same amount of the earth, and slope transform to help people to find their own places instead of also toilet is spread it into the site instead of having one toilet building in one park. Like each toilet having unique character, like Tono toilet, treehouse toilet, terrace toilet, they are all genderless toilet, so that people can select the toilet where they want to go instead of like gender. And this area famous with a cutting technique for greenery. So now I'm very interested in referring these techniques so that maybe this shaper trimmed green show the passage of the time, because always greenery is growing. And just as a reference, now I'm trying to use the rubble of the roofing tiles of the houses which has been demolished, which was existing like this. And after knowing Takamizawa house, I couldn't ignore these houses. So you can see now it has a clearly certain influence on my design. Thank you. Danke.
Thank you very much, Ryoko-san, Jo-san, and Kozo-san. I think we are, even though you had only a short time to present your work, I think it became very clear your basic idea and your strengths, how you really deal together on similar questions. And I must say, I'm extremely impressed, because when I was living in the 90s in Tokyo, at that time, as a foreigner, I felt always very embarrassed about the fact that these houses have been destroyed time by time. And I was living in Yanaka, and it was, yeah, it is still a beautiful place today. But at that time, there were even more houses of this type you showed now. But it was very difficult for me to discuss it with my foreign colleagues at Todai, because nobody really took this part as a precious part to rethink of it. And I feel now there's a big change in the awareness of yours. And Jörg Gleiter and me, we agreed before that he would like to start with some questions to you. And I hope that before we open the discussion back to the audience, I could step into it also a little bit. So please, Jörg, if you would like to start.
Yes, Heike, thank you very much. Of course, thank you to the presenters, to all of you. And it was really interesting to see a kind of new view of Japan. Thank you for sharing your ideas and your projects with us. And well, after the presentation, particularly of the Japanese pavilion to come next year, I thought maybe this project is something about an archaeology of the everyday or an anonymous life in Japan. And well, And I think maybe this is an indicator, this interest in this kind of architecture, in this kind of history of architecture culture, but not only architecture culture, but in culture, Japanese culture in general, that this is an indicator for a change in Japan. Well, I have the feeling that maybe with this pavilion, which was supposed to be open this year, which will be able to be seen next year, that something is changing. That's an indicator for the change, for a massive change in Japan. Maybe a certain period, maybe the after-war period of Japan comes to an end. There's a different attitude to design, to the history, to the everyday history. So my question to Kadowaki-san is, what do you guess? What is the reason behind this new attitude in architecture culture in Japan?
Thank you, Joji. I think the tsunami experience occurred in 2011 was very huge for the Japanese architects. When the tsunami occurred, I and Joe Nagasaka-san discussed about what we can do for the disaster areas. But after that, I worked with the architects who has the voluntary network to aid the disaster areas. As you know, the disasters area are located in the Tohoku areas. And of course, the tsunami destroyed the urban areas and also the fishermen's villages. And the architects visited to the fishermen's villages, and we learned very, very much from the anonymous houses of the fishermen. In there, we can't design the newly like a modernist building. So we have to continue the daily life of the fishermen. So we learn from the ordinary house of the villages and adapt the languages of the traditional architectural elements.
Yeah.
And we adopted it to our design. It's my very big experience for me. And I'd like to introduce my colleague, Toshi.
Hi.
Do you have any thing?
Yeah.
This discussion.
Yeah, thank you for introducing me. The point I would like to answer, is the very question of, Jörg, which is like, what's the very new attitude in Japanese architectural culture, and all the presentation that we made today, is I think about. It's also, somehow response, to disaster also, but how to see materials and how to see components itself is actually a very design, of architecture. That was somewhat a discovery, which happened recently, in Japanese architectural culture, I guess. The very example, is maybe the apartment, that, Joe showed us today. Like he confronted, the situation, that the budget is very limited, but this limitation, had him to focus on what kind of, way of seeing the situation is, leading, much more excited, architectural expression, rather than just making and adding and proposing, new things, but just to read differently, those elements.
can we call it a kind of post-industrial architecture in Japan now? So if you're interested in these materials, which are natural materials, much of it, the wood, for example, in comparison or
like you can maybe call in that way also, but I think it can also be an issue of material, or maybe it can be an issue of a culture, very culture itself also, like how how do I say, like intervene to the way of perception by people. I think this intervention into that moment is the very design, and the exhibition that we are trying to do is also is to basically visualize and inform people like in how to see things, how to understand those say components and materials, and just by being informed can people lead experience architecture in totally different way. And that is, I think, the very core of like recent Japanese shift, I would say.
But I think it's maybe it's more than a shift. It's a long process. If you look back, maybe. For example, we had 25 years ago, there was a similar catastrophe, and there was an exhibition in the Japanese Pavilion in Venice about the earthquake, the Kobe earthquake, caused also 5,000 casualties, and it won the Golden Lion. So maybe already then a process started somehow to redivert the interest in architecture, maybe to focus more on the everyday life, on this small scale architecture and architecture which is linked to a small budget, so to the people. Let's say. So if you talk about the shift, maybe it's a long process already, which goes on for the last 25 years. So it took several generations of architects. What do you think about this?
I want to answer, but maybe I don't know. I talk too much for now. So
maybe. Yeah.
I would like to add maybe that to me it seems that this development in contemporary Japanese architecture is maybe in parallel movements you can see in Europe as well, right? And it seems to me that it has not only to do with this catastrophe in Japan, but it has maybe also to do with that we are somehow getting bored or getting overfilled with oil consumption and with things which seems to be easy to achieve, but not worth to live for it. I don't know. I think it has a more philosophical question behind, because I believe it is in parallel in different countries. It is happening, especially in Europe. And it would interest me if you observe this as well, or if you see it totally as something else.
Yeah, I agree with you because to add the comment to Toshi, I would say we see architecture as a chain. I mean, CHANIN. I mean, like we are not thinking of a space itself, but we are thinking as a circle of how to produce and how architecture affects something. We see this kind of link. So I think this kind of movement is common also in Europe right now.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, that she, picked up. Like somehow, like architecture, which can be experienced only through time axis, maybe, like not like say architecture which you can take photo of, but like you need to be there, you need to be involved with the process, and you need to collect the information, throughout, the very experience of architecture. And those things, is somewhat maybe, have a similar quality as, say, ordinary life. And, that, maybe if I try to connect, to your point, then maybe we can say something like that. Like, seeing, say, magazine and then, seeing, fancy, rendering or like, photos of architecture. That's also beautiful. But at the same time, like, ordinary life, can only, you can, enjoy it only by being there and then, feeling, the atmosphere, making, communication with others. And like, those are parts of architecture, which, we try to integrate, into the design process, I would say, like, to show the very process of transportations, costs, and communication, with owners and such. Like all those are parts of architecture, we can say.
Yeah, I think there's a question from Ulf Meyer, and maybe you just want to switch on your microphone, Ulf, and let us know your question, please.
Thank you very much. Sorry, yes, I wrote something into the chat, but I'm also happy to ask it verbally. I think the phrase ephemeral architecture is kind of in the room without anybody having mentioned it yet. Is that not something typically Japanese that has been around for centuries and might not be related to the recent Tōkyō earthquake and tsunami? I think this has been around for hundreds of years. Thank you very much.
Please. Is this a question to Kadowaki-san?
Okay, but I think there is a clearly change before earthquake and after earthquake. First change is in 10 years ago, the all Japanese modern buildings are white and slender. But nowadays, we are very interested in the concrete materiality and the tectonics and so on. It is a very big model change, I think. But I know that there are also ephemeral architecture, as you say, but it's a certainly common sense among the Japanese architecture.
And maybe you need an event which is opening the eye, an eye opener, which then somehow differs somehow the interest to another, another aspect of culture which was maybe not as much in the focus before. So maybe that is maybe the function also in terms of architecture, the function of these catastrophes, or being forced to deal with now with somehow a kind of with problems in a situation which before were not in the focus of architecture. But what I would also like to ask you is, for example, what I had a feeling that this project you are presenting at the Venice Biennale is not looking to the West. It's somehow totally based somehow within the Japanese culture without looking abroad and saying what are they looking, or what do they want us to do, and what are they doing. And I found a new quality somehow in this project. Does it really somehow centered somehow in itself? Would you agree?
Maybe we weren't necessarily started, from West or tradition or modern or unmodern. that was not the central question, but we wanted to start from the very, say, natural and casual attitude, which we always do somewhat, when we are doing architectural design, in, say, ordinary Japanese, context, and how to materialize, this, sense of, being in Japanese, culture. Maybe that was, somehow, what we were trying to do, and then somehow interpret, this sense, into international context. In that sense, maybe, yeah, we did, yeah, exposing, of this, I don't know, Japanese ordinariness, into international context, but again, that was not the, how do I say, central, question, that we made first, so I don't know, like, sorry, for the vague answer, but.
Okay, thank you. I think Heike, you would like to ask a question regarding the design and the ordinary. We need your microphone.
Thank you. I didn't notice. Yes, I'm interested in one more general question would be about the attitude to withdraw from the design. This is maybe what we already discussed. But the more specific question would be about your project, Kozu-san, because when you maybe or if the audience would remember the first slide you showed your own house design and the design of the Takamizuwa house. And what I found astonishing is that you, in your attitude to the street, you use this white plain sheet, like a white paper in a way, and it has a very monumental attitude. And at the same time that the old house in front of your house has a similar intention, I think, because it becomes through this rather abstract box, it becomes a more public sign. It has a public function, I believe. When I was living in Tokyo, you could see these houses from the 50s and maybe also from the 30s with very similar attitude. No? It was a kind of a reaction towards the street, to put this kind of box on the second floor, I think. And I would wonder if this kind of mixture between private space and public space at the street facade, if that is something you are interested in, or if this is something you absolutely do maybe just by feeling, or if this is something, is this a discussion for you? Because we are now only discussing in a way, the private house, but this house has a public function, and I believe it is an important point. And with this box, in a way, it's a step towards modernism, no? To change a traditional house towards a modern house, no? Is that so?
Talking about my house and the Takamizawa house, I love this Takamizawa house because this house has many design elements in this house. For example, we call this facade as a billboard. We call such building billboard architecture because the tangle roof wooden house is covered by the billboard, like has a flat roof, a modern building. It is the behavior of the shop house in the Japan, and I wanted to design such a very complex design by myself in the new reconstruction. So I learned from this billboard architecture from from Takamisa's house and adapted the behavior to my house. And it is because I designed the complexity in my house and also to make the continuity or continuity of the urbanism in this area. So this is not the modern architecture. This is what architecture learned from this area and this area and the behaviors of the buildings around this area.
Yes. Thank you very much. I would just like to make one comment. I would like to encourage our audience to come up with questions, maybe in the chat or raise your hand. Please, Heike.
Yeah, no, I can see this. It's and I think it's a quite for me. It's a new way to how to react on the or to react in an urban context. I think usually Japanese architects intend to not to think in the context, but to think as a single object architecture, I believe. And in your design, one can clearly see that you react on the house next to it. But what I meant is that through this reaction, you have a quite, you establish a little bit a monumental entrance. And I would be interested if this is unconscious or what do you think about it, or why did you do it? Because maybe you could have done it even more abstract without an entrance or whatever.
Yeah, it is because I'm an architect.
Okay, okay, maybe it's now too far. We can discuss it later. Yeah.
Maybe if I add one thing, because I really like his house, so I made a lot of discussion with him, but the interesting point that he pointed out before was that like he wanted to have parts of house belonging not only to his house or not only to his boundary but to the other boundary, so that the house could be somehow tear apart into urban pieces, so that inside house can be somehow outside by having such effect. And then I don't know if you can see that but like apparently the wall attracted your eye, and that kind of thing is happening actually everywhere in his house. And so that the house is more open than just making glass wall or anything. Like the transparent is not only the, how do I say, language that you can take. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
So, well, there's another question coming up. I was wondering, what is exactly the intention of your design or of your pavilion or the staging of this old house in Venice? Is this more about documenting the current state of affairs in Japan? Is there intention which goes beyond that? Particularly if you see somehow the two houses of Kadowaki-san on the one side, we saw only one facade of it, and we know now the story of the Takamisawa house. So is there any intention, or what would you think that the Japanese pavilion triggers somehow in the architecture in the community in Japan?
Maybe again I go first,
yes,
and
yes,
maybe
sure. Yes.
Kadowaki-san and others can answer later. But maybe I'm repeating myself. But that exhibition itself, is, of course, we would like to show the house itself also. It's a documentation, in that way, but at the same time, the process of documenting and process of, bringing, this house, is really, the how do I say, visualization of, how to see those components and materials. And only by doing so, how, to which degree, people can, experience, this house in the way, that was, in Japan, at the same time, being reinterpreted and, from different, perspective, which can lead what kind of experience, in Venice. And somehow it's like an improvisation, and the communication, with others make, architecture may be different also. And like to show the very experiment itself, of this, is, I think, the very purpose, of the Japanese pavilion, so it's like a media, to, communicate, this idea.
I think it is quite important that you do not reassemble the house as it was, because otherwise the project would be fall back somehow in the 19th century to the World Exhibitions. For example, there's this famous Byodo-in, which was rebuilt or newly built, let's say, in a smaller scale at the Chicago exhibition. When was it? In 1876, I guess. So that would be just falling back into old habits, somehow, showing, to the world, part of Japanese culture at the time. Of course, when at that time, there was no internet, no movies, and even photography was not really well developed. And I found this very important in this project here, not to reassemble it. And
exactly.
And then somehow have it a kind of experimental, leave it in a kind of experimental stage where, as you showed, there are certain things will be rebuilt, or there are structures built out of this material, but it's somehow more thought enhancing than actually pointing to a real production construction process.
Yeah. So if I exaggerate maybe myself,
please do so.
I would basically like everybody, to do creative misread, of those components. That's basically all about, maybe my intention, to somehow involve, with the design process of this pavilion.
Okay.
But maybe,
yes.
Yeah, the others have, different point
I think Ulf Meyer has also wants to enter the discussion again, if I understood this right.
Thank you. Sorry. Yes. In case the pandemic lasts longer than we all hope, is there a plan what to do or how to react? Would you just postpone it, your contribution once again, or would you somehow relate to that terrible situation architecturally or from a curatorial point of view? Thank you very much.
Probably it's a question to Kadowaki-san, no?
あれだよね、延期が
あった場合に、なんか、またポストポンするっていうことなのか、なんか、話してるからってことだと思うんですけど、他の人たちと。どういう戦略があるのかみたいな質問だと思います。
もう一回の延期でしょ？
Is there any potential to be extended later again? I don't want, but maybe.
The national curators are not discussing about the next postpone, but we are now talking about to make the common place, which does not belong to any countries. We call it Curators Commons, and we try to make the Curators Commons here and there in Venice. And we'd like to show a national project or the collaborative project between nations. So now we
yeah,
please.
Actually now we have a kind of some project to collaborate with which country was it?
Philippines
team, like, because they want to use our material and transporting Takamizawa component to maybe Oslo to build their project, and we kind of join the team for the construction and design.
Yeah,
maybe.
it's very interesting when using Japanese material by Philippine, creators, doing projects in Oslo, that sounds like, it's an interesting one. Yes.
So are we turning back into a time where material becomes valuable? While in modern times, material was just, you would produce it and throw it away. While here in this case, I have the feeling it's also about a revaluation of the material, so that you ship material that long, over the ocean to be reused in a different kind of context. While the shipping costs are rather low, but the material is something valuable. That would be probably a new attitude towards architecture and its making.
Yeah. We don't maybe have a, clear answer to it, but what I think interesting, is like, if you say material as just really material, then it's slightly different, than what's happening, I think. What's important, is I think, those materials or components with somehow the layers of information, embedded in it, makes it somehow, more valuable than just material. And basically, those history, I can say also, is making those materials, more than just material, right? And then by doing so, by having, such, information in it, normally, it doesn't make too much difference because it's unreadable. But once it, becomes readable by design, in some, creative, intention, then, it can, double, its value, more than just, again, material very itself. So I don't think this is always true, or everybody can do this, so that, like, the world becomes much better. Maybe it's not like that, but at least if you be careful, with this reading of ordinariness, or reading of those contextual information, sometimes you can use it to make architecture in a completely different manner. And then again, it's not always the case, but at the same time, there's very much of chance everywhere, which we can create new culture within everywhere, I think.
We can even almost talk about a kind of psychological process which was going on, dismantling the house. Because I was shocked by this image, seeing first a house, an ordinary house with cheap materials. Then the materials were taken off, and all of a sudden, a wooden house appeared, almost a classical, it's a little bit exaggerated, but almost a classical Japanese house. And I found this very interesting, that underneath the ordinary, there is a kind of stable substance within culture, and you're digging through this, the layers of modernism, postmodernism, and industrialism, and somehow bringing to the surface something which seems to have a kind of quality of its own. And so it's almost soul digging, or digging into the soul of Japanese culture. And that I found interesting.
Right. And so what you said, what you said is actually, like Ryoko showed, this riverbank, layers of, histories, and Joe showed us, again, different elements, one by one, one action by one action, it's got, revealed. And, those things, like, as you said, it's right under discovery. And
absolutely,
yeah,
Joel's project was very interesting also in this regard.
Yes,
taking
we
off
think
walls, opening new. All of a sudden, there's a new house appearing. Yes.
Yes, we think it is very important to add new layer in Venice. Mm-hmm. So we think on-site is very important, and create in ad hoc way in Venice is very important. It's what we learn from Jo-san. So I'd like to hear Jo's thinking about this to create on-site, or to create with manufacturing. And this is the different point from the building pavilion.
Exactly.
Very interesting. Yes. Well, since there are no questions from the audience,
there is one. Sorry.
There is one. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, Mrs. Inke Wolk.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
All these developments might have something to do with our experience of nature, which has changed a lot. I mean, COVID maybe is the most impressive example that how strong nature could become and how weak we humans are against it, and also that it's not separated into nations or certain people. It's a problem for all of us. So I think we all experience the power of nature, and that maybe gives a similar sensibility towards material, towards where to pick ideas from, and maybe go back to times where there was a better balance between nature and urbanism, and therefore look at more simple constructions or traditional work. And this time it doesn't come from an ethic and philosophical approach. It comes directly through a physical experience, I could imagine. And therefore, in Japan, this has a long tradition. But as we experience it, it is a philosophical, quite cultured approach. And I think this is very, very interesting that this cultural approach now meets with this basic human sensibility.
Thank you.
I know I talk too much, but maybe I can, introduce, one, say, example. So here, we don't have him today, but as a team member, Tsunayama Taichi, Taichi Tsunayama, he's one of the members of our project, and he did a project of making stone from paper. And then, this project, was very interesting, like it's almost like, just by picking up random, like whatever stone, from the street. But, he basically, observes, this stone, from, different directions, and, which, what kind of shape, it is. And then, one by one, he read it, this, stone carefully, and then, reproduce it, in 3D, and then, making scanning and such, he reproduces, this stone, but very artificial manner. And then, like, here somehow, this, another member, of our team, is somehow, making, this natural thing and, like normal, daily things that, how do I say, coming together somehow, in this project. And then, I don't know, if that is, your point, but somehow, this kind of attitude, can be applied, to, how do I say, almost everything, including nature, around us, to pay careful attention and, read fine information in it and, reinterpret it, to make, by the way, this, paper stone, is being used, to say for furniture or for, making exhibitions, stage and such. And that was like very, how do I say? I don't know. The project of reinterpretation, not only artificial things, but extended, to natural elements and maybe, I don't know, like, yeah. Good. Thank you.
You keep talking about stones.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Heike, probably, I don't know, I have the feeling that the discussion is coming to end after.
Yes, I think we have a lot to think about, and I hope that we will see us at the opening of the Venice Biennale in May. But anyway, first of all, I would like to thank again everybody of the Japanese-German Center. I would like to thank the audience to be patient with us and to join us. And I would like you to thank Jörg for your ambitious questions. And also, of course, our guests. And I have a feeling that it's, for me at least, this project really describes a different awareness of nature, one could say, in general, like Imke said, or maybe in architectural sense as well. And I believe that this interconnection, even so these virtual dialogues are always a little bit unnatural, but I think it gives us the chance to get closer to each of us. And so in a way, I'm very happy maybe to have this situation, because if you just meet at the Biennale for a short time, you would not have the time to talk about it. And now we had really the chance to listen to you for the first time in Europe, I think, to this project. Okay. And it's very good to me. So thank you very much.
But can we be sure that we are in Europe? With this discussion, people come from all over the world. Yes, but thank you, Heike. Sure. And I would like to give back the microphone to Frau Holtgrün for some final concluding remarks.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Gleiter, and thanks to all of you for this fascinating lecture and dialogue. And well, that I'm speaking again means that unfortunately we have come to the end of our program today. So I'm glad that you give me once again the opportunity for some final remarks. First of all, I would like to mention that next to our audience on Zoom, there were quite a lot of people watching on the live stream on YouTube, on the Japanese-German Center's YouTube channel as well. And please let me also draw your attention that the video will stay on YouTube, so you can watch it again and also invite your colleagues to watching it afterwards. Please allow me also to draw your attention to two upcoming virtual events at the Japanese-German Center Berlin, even though the topics are quite different from what we discussed today. Sorry for that. We will hold a virtual panel discussion on the topic of EU-Japan relations beyond the Strategic Partnership Agreement on November 26th, so next Thursday. And we will host a virtual two-day symposium on nuclear disarmament, arms control and non-proliferation on December 3rd and 4th. And now, to officially close the event, I would like to thank all of you once again very much, our distinguished speakers, Professor Kadowaki, Mr. Nagasaka, Ms. Iwase, and also Mr. Kyochi, particularly for being willing to stay up so late in the night for the German audience. I do thank very, very much our cooperation partners, Professor Hanada and Professor Gleiter. It was a great pleasure to continue our fruitful cooperation for the Radikal Modern series. And last but not least, I would like to thank our virtual audience for participation. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. For those of you in Japan, finally a good night, and goodbye from the virtual Japanese-German Center Berlin. Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye.